Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 18th of December of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. So the main political battle of 2025 has begun, and this battle started in the territory of Belgium in Brussels, where the European summit is taking place. Today Ursula von der Leyen stated that no one will leave the European Union summit until the issue of Ukraine's funding is resolved. So as you understand, the most important question is the most important political battle will be around the frozen Russian assets. I will not leave the Council without a resolution on Ukraine's funding, the European Commission chief said. According to her, the issue of expropriating Russian assets under the guise of a reparation loan to Ukraine remains on the European Union summit agenda. We will discuss two options: funding Ukraine from the budget, which would be financed by a pan-European loan, or a reparation loan based on Russian assets. So two ways: either to take money from the European taxpayers or to take money from the Russian Federation. And of course, the European leaders want to take Russian money. Furthermore, according to information we have, Zelensky came to Brussels with the purpose to support people and to support the idea to take the Russian money. Zelensky will attend the European Council meeting in Brussels on December 18 and 19. A European official told journalists on Wednesday that Zelensky will be present in person, reversing earlier plans to join the summit by video link. One of the key issues expected to be discussed is the allocation of so-called reparations loan to Ukraine using frozen Russian assets. But according to information we have, there are 7 European Union members states oppose this proposal. As for the Chancellor of Germany, he stated that we intend to use Russian assets to finance the armed forces of Ukraine for at least 2 more years. This step is not about prolonging the war, but about bringing the war to end as soon as possible. So if you ask my opinion, I believe that Ukraine will get money. As of now, I don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians will get money from the, let's say, pan-European loan, or this is going to be a frozen Russian assets. Very difficult to say, but one thing is clear, that Zelensky will get money and he will be able to finance his military for another 2 years or something like this. Furthermore, Zelensky during the previous 24 hours during the European summit made lots of very important statements, so let's discuss them in details. Ending the war is directly linked to reliable security guarantees. The final decision on funding for Ukraine could be made by the end of the year, so within the next 2 weeks. There are several ways Ukraine can obtain funding. Putin doesn't want to stop this war, but he may do so under pressure from Trump. In negotiations with the United States of America regarding security guarantees, the quality and size of the Ukraine army are key. Ukraine feels more confident at the negotiation table with such an instrument. That's without it. Here is talking about Russian assets. Security guarantees must include a clear mechanism to deter Russia. What will the United States of America do if Russia begins aggression again? I have one goal: to get an answer to this question. But when talking about these Russian frozen assets and when talking about the United States of America, the Americans are against this situation, because the Americans, according to the Washington Post, have clearly made it clear to Europeans that they want to use these funds to achieve a peace agreement on Ukraine. So anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. These 2 days are very important, and we see that this meeting is started today for a reason. According to information we have, during the weekend, the United States of America will have a meeting with the Russian delegation in the territory of Miami, where the delegations will discuss the current situation, the current status of talks between Ukraine, the European Union, the United States of America, and the Russian Federation. And of course, if the European Union and the European countries are able and will take money, the Russian frozen assets, and if they provide this money to Ukraine, where everybody in the world understands that the talks on the territory of the United States of America will fail, obviously, at the beginning. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, but the situation is very difficult, and this is very important because on the results of this main political battle of 2025, a lot of depends, especially the possibilities of the armed forces of Ukraine to hold the Russians along the line of combat contact. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine, and first let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation, and during the previous 24 hours the Russians improved their position significantly. First let's talk about the western Zaporizhzhia direction. We have already discussed the situation in this area during the previous video. Nothing changed since the previous video, but let's discuss once again, so because this situation shows us the entire picture. So the Russians began offensive operation along this dense network of the fortifications. We are talking about the territory between the settlement of Stepnogorsk and the settlement of Orekhov. So we are talking about this area, a very strong and very long defense layer between those two settlements that protects and defends the city of Zaporizhzhia from the south. This is one of the most powerful defense lines through the entire line of combat contact since the beginning of the special military operation. And according to information we have, the Russians began advancing right exactly in this area from the west in the eastern direction. As you can see, this defense layer was designed to repel Russian possible attacks from the south. So if the Russians were attacking, let's say, from the south in the northern direction, most likely all these attacks would be repelled by Ukrainians without any problems and without probably huge losses from their side. But the Russians during the previous months managed to outflank this defense layer through the settlement of Stepnogorsk, and now the Russians are going to advance from the west in the eastern direction. And during the previous 48 hours the Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their position significantly. As of now, the Russians managed to take under control just 5% of this dense network of the fortifications, but it's just the beginning. We saw the same situation, not just this is not something new for Russians. We saw something similar in the area of the city of Gulyaipole when the Russians were advancing through this dense layer of the fortifications. The same story took place in the area of the settlements of Velika Mikhailovka towards the settlement of Pokrovsk. The same story, the Russians were advancing along the line that this defense layer wasn't designed to, let's say, defend the forces of the armed forces of Ukraine. So it obviously will take several months for Russians to take this territory under complete control, and then the Russians will have possibilities to attack the city of Orekhov from the west and from the northwest. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the eastern Zaporizhzhia direction. The map, as you can see, has been adjusted once again in comparison with the previous day. This is the situation by the end of the 17th of December of 2025, and this is the end of the 18th of December. The Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their positions in the southeastern part of the city of Gulyaipole. This was stated by different sources, and we have a video that confirms this information. Here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in the southeastern part of the settlement of Gulyaipole with FPV drones. One of the attacks took place exactly at this point, and based on this report, based on this video, we have adjusted the map under complete control of Russians. So as you can see, the map hasn't been adjusted when talking about the territory of Ukrainian control. The map has been adjusted just in the area of the gray zone. Another important update is coming in the area from the area of the settlement of Dobropolye. Today, several pro-Russian sources stated that the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to break through Ukrainian defense on the line between the villages of Ternovate and the city of Gulyaipole. The Russians broke through this defense layer and improved their positions. And as you can see, this is the second place where the Russians managed to breach Ukrainian defense along the river of Gaichur to the west of the R85 road. So this progress is very interesting because now we see that the Russians are taking the settlement of Ternovate in pincers. The Russians managed to improve their positions to the south of the settlement. Now the Russians are tasked to improve their positions also to the north of the settlement. And when Russians improve their positions for a few more square kilometers, then they will be able to begin offensive on the city of Ternovate from the south and from the north. And as we discussed in the previous videos, if Russians are able to establish a strong control over the Ukrainian side of the river of Gaichur, somewhere along this red line, most likely from these positions, the Ukrainians will not be able anymore to force the Russians to fall back on the Ukrainian side, on the Russian side of the river. From these positions, the Russians will continue offensive operation further, either in the western direction and of course in the southwestern direction, to strike the settlement of Orekhov from behind. So this is basically a disaster, complete disaster according to to my opinion. We don't see anything from Ukrainian media, from Ukrainian sources about this breakthrough, because as we discussed, this is the most important point probably through the entire line of combat contact, through the entire special military operation, because this foothold, this bridgehead around the settlement of Ternovate opens the Russians the way towards the city of Zaporizhzhia. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 12 hours, we received additional changes. As we discussed in the previous video, the Ukrainians are trying to concentrate their forces around the settlement of Slavenka. The sources are saying that Ukrainians are planning a counter-offensive operation with the purpose just to answer the city of Pokrovsk before 2026 comes. They want to get the city and they want to probably to show another media victory that will confirm the presence of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk. So this is the first reason, and the second one is related to the Alexander Syrsky itself, a commander-in-chief of the armored forces of Ukraine. You know that today the Russian intelligence service published a very interesting article about him. The main statements from the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. So the Russians are saying that in Western diplomatic circles, attention is being drawn to the rapid decline of the authority of the commander-in-chief of the armored forces of Ukraine, Syrsky. So the Russians are trying to tell us that Syrsky at a very high risk of being dismissed by Zelensky and basically by Ukraine government and Ukrainian authorities. So that is why he doesn't have any other option but to counterattack with the purpose to get and to show at least any result or any success along the front line. So the first counteroffensive operation was carried out and is still ongoing in the area of the city of Kupyansk, where the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions, and where we cannot decline this information. As of now, we haven't received, let's say, lots of geolocations and videos that can confirm Ukrainian progress on the ground, but most likely they will be published. And probably Syrsky was tasked to counterattack in the area of the city of Pokrovsk with the purpose to re-enter the city, and most likely this is the decisive battle for him. If he loses this battle, if he is not able to answer the city of Pokrovsk by the end of the 2025, most likely at the beginning of 2026, the commander-in-chief of the armored forces of Ukraine, Syrsky, would be dismissed by Zelensky. So this is what the Russians are trying to tell us. So that is why Zelensky is trying to increase the number of forces in this area with the purpose to counterattack in coming days, which means that in coming days, a very heavy clashes will be recorded in the area of the city of Pokrovsk. Ukrainians will try to re-enter the settlement with the purpose to show another media victory. So the next days are going to be very hot, and let's wait and see. As of the city right now, as for the city of Mirnograd, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions on the territory of the city of Mirnograd. The Russians improved their positions in the southern and the northwestern parts of the northern part of the city. This information was provided by neutral mappers. Furthermore, according to pro-Russian sources, the armored forces of the Russian Federation improved their positions on the territory of the village of Grishina. So the Russians are advancing, trying most likely to improve their positions before the beginning of the Syrsky counter-offensive operation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Siversk. The Russians continued their offensive operation during the previous 24 hours. We haven't received many updates, just the confirmation of the previous posts. Today, neutral mappers confirmed that Russians improved their positions along TO 513 road to the south of the settlement of Siversk. So these territories were taken by Russians. Furthermore, the Russians, according to media, improved their positions in the area of the villages of Ozerno and Dibrova. This information was also provided by different media and different sources, and we have this video where we can see how exactly the clashes for this territory were taking place, how the Russians were attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine through this territory. So based on this video, we haven't adjusted anything, but one thing is clear, that the Russians are increasing their pressure on the territory of Ozerno with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back towards the settlement of Krivoluka. Furthermore, the sources are saying that there are still very heavy clashes for the settlement of Zaketne and for the settlement of Liman. Now let's talk about the city of Kupyansk. The Ukrainians started their counter-offensive operation several days ago, basically at the beginning of December of 2025. Currently, there are very heavy clashes between Russians and Ukrainians, and every single day we are adjusting the map in Ukrainian favor. So this is the map by the end of the 11th of December of 2025, and from this moment we began adjusting significantly the map in Ukrainian favor by coloring more and more blocks in micro-district under complete control of the armored forces of Ukraine. As of now, we have lots of changes, but despite this number of changes, we still haven't received lots of videos that can confirm that indeed the Ukrainians are counter-attacking. The Russians are telling us completely different thing. They're basically telling us the opposite things to the Ukrainian reality. The Russians are saying that yes, the situation is very difficult, but under complete control. So anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next, because obviously everybody understands that in 2, 3, 4, 5 days, the situation will, the fog of war will be removed and the situation will become clear. As for the Kharkiv direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions to the south of the settlement of Volchansk and in the southeastern part of the settlement of Vilcha. So the sources are saying that, and according to this configuration of the map, we believe that in coming 2-3 days, the Russians will be able to take the settlement of Vilcha under complete control, which will open the Russians the Kharkiv operational space. And right exactly after this situation, the Russians will begin their offensive operation in the direction of the settlement of Bely Kolodez. Furthermore, the Russians continue concentration of their troops in the area of the city of Sumy. I would like to remind you that according to different sources, first Ukrainians took their forces from the Sumy direction in the direction of the city of Kupyansk, which weakened the Ukrainian positions there. Then the Ukrainians took another batch of units and redeployed them in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk, and this is currently an ongoing process. The sources are saying that Ukrainians are redeploying the 47th, 78th and 71st brigades of the armored forces of Ukraine, which most likely will lead to complete probably to huge problems with manpower and shortage of manpower in this direction, and the Russians might try to use this advantageous situation, and they will begin their counter-offensive operation with the purpose to restore control over the territories the Russians lost during the Ukrainians' August and September counter-offensive operation in this area. And that's it for today. Military with Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.